Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's go. I would like to know if what I did was wrong. So it's a long story, but I'll start it at the best place I can think of, the start. I am currently homeless. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. It's completely because of a medical issue. This is relevant because it means I spend almost all my time outdoors in the parks and forests. Well, yesterday I was out for one of my usual hikes through the woods while going through a parking lot that has access to the trails. I came upon a raccoon in the parking lot at high noon. I know it's not an unusual thing to see a wild animal in and around the forests and parks, but this time was different. The animal was rabid. It was clearly very sick. It had all the signs of rabies. It was foaming at the mouth, wandering around the lot, dazed and confused. Worst of all, it was approaching people. It tried to come out to me walking on its hind legs, front arms stretched out like it was coming in for a hug. I called animal control and waited for 30 minutes. In that time, I was warning people to stay back. Every so often, the raccoon would collapse and have a seizure, slowly recover, and start wandering again. It was clear the animal was very sick and not long for this world. Animal control called me back to inform me that they would be there shortly for the animal and said I could leave. I did. I left and went to get some bologna for lunch and dinner. Well, I had to go back that way to return to camp. 2 hours had passed since I left. When I got back, there was this older woman standing at the side of the parking lot. Guess what? Animal control never showed up for the thing. I called again, and I was told that they aren't coming because there's no street address to go to. That animal was suffering. I spoke with a woman who was also trying to get animal control, and honestly, we decided that the best thing to do is to show it mercy and put it out of its misery. So I went into the woods and found a very big, heavy log, more of a club, to do just that. Well, when I got back to the animal to do the deed, another woman came running up with her cell phone in hand, screaming at me, saying, "What are you doing? Can't do that." She was recording me. We tried to explain that animal control won't come, that the animal is clearly rabid. You can tell it's in pain. She yelled at me, saying it's not my job, that what I was going to do is cruel and illegal, that she's going to call the cops. At this time, the raccoon had collapsed, its entire body shaking. It was having another seizure. I really didn't want to do it, honestly. What I had to do hurt my heart, but I did it with one whack, ended its suffering. The woman who was helping me thanked me for being the one to do it. The other one who was yelling followed me, screaming, calling me a dirty bum, disgusting, a monster, screaming I am going to jail, and some really nasty remarks about how they were going to have fun with me in prison. Honestly, I feel horrible for doing it, but I think I made the right choice. Edit. Autocorrect got me in the title, Rabid Not Rabbit. Sorry. Edit. Just learned it was probably not rabies. There is a disease that ravages raccoon populations called distemper. And reading up on it, it's the most likely case. But yeah, it ends up causing a long, painful end to the animal. Believe me or not that this happened to me in one day. I 30 female work customer service, hair store if anyone cares, and I love my job despite the crazy and rude customers I may get once or twice a week. From putting money on the counter to paid but wants their change handed back to wanting the most expensive thing in the store only to complain about the price of it. I thought I've dealt with it all, but his was baffling to me and takes the cake. We just opened and we only got a few customers come in. 3 people, exactly. A woman brought 4 bags of braiding hair to me at the counter. I smiled and was about to speak and ring her up, but she cuts me off and says she's not ready yet and goes down another aisle. She brings back more stuff and continues to tell me each time she's not done yet or she's still looking. I offer her a basket to carry her items, but she said no and leaves again. She makes about 4 trips back to the counter at this point, and I decided since she didn't want a basket, I moved her items behind the counter with me to be out the way. When I do this, another customer is actually ready to check out. I happily start ringing up the items, but then guess who walks back up? She immediately asked where her things were. I told her I moved them to the side so that they wouldn't be in the way of other customers, and I didn't want to accidentally ring her stuff with someone else. Well, she wasn't happy to hear this. She said she was almost done and shouldn't have checked out anyone before her, That was apparently the point of her leaving all her items on the counter. I reminded her she'd told me multiple times she wasn't ready, and I offered her a basket so she could shop freely, but she snapped at me saying she didn't want the basket, and I shouldn't have checked anyone out when she was there first. I sighed deeply because it was 9:30ish in the morning now, and I really did want to deal with this so early. We literally just opened. I told the woman just because she sat something up here doesn't make it a save my spot in line pass. If you say you're not ready and someone is done shopping, I will get the next person in line. I asked her if she was ready now, holding up my scanner. She said yes, but wanted my manager, store owner, to do it. I said he out back doing inventory and I couldn't leave the counter. She was pissed and claimed she was in a hurry to get to work. I ranged up her stuff mid-slow. Which pissed her off more, I don't care. After I gave her the bag, she said she's going to talk to my manager later. I smiled and said, okay. I told him about it, and he rolled his eye and told me not to worry about it. I wasn't, but I laughed. Fast forward to noon, I went on my lunch break. Picked up my order, returned to the parking lot of my job, and sat in my car eating while watching videos on my phone. The next thing I hear is a knock on my window. There is a woman, different woman, standing at my door. I rolled my window slightly and asked, yeah, can I help you? She says she needs help. I'm thinking like she lost something or her car won't start and need a jump. I say, sure, ma'am, what's wrong? She says, I need your help in the store. Immediately, I shook my head and said, now. I told the girl I was on my lunch break, but my manager was in the store to help her with anything she needed. She then says, but I want your help, so come help me, please. I tell her no, but I'll be back after my break. She looked so offended, I guess, and says while folding her arms, are you really not going to come help me? I looked at my phone, then back at her and say, ma'am, I have 20 more minutes left on my break. When I get back, I'll help you if you just only want my help, but I'm not leaving my car. She stomps into the store and I went back to my videos. Not long after, I see the girl standing outside with my manager pointing at me. According to him, she was trying to get him to make me come in to help her with whatever she needed. He told her I would be back in later, but he would help her. She refused his help and left the store. I swear I got a headache from all this. I told my husband about the day I had, and he said maybe the second girl liked me and that's why she only wanted my help. I told him, even if that was true, she still would have to wait till my break was over. We laughed about it, but it really was the craziest encounter with entitled people in one day for me. Preface. My girlfriend and I are both 30 years old and have been together for over a year with a brand new baby that was born 2 months ago. I have 3 children of my own with an ex-wife that we all have been a happy blended family, my girlfriend, me, my 3 kids, and the new baby. Beginning of the signs. Girlfriend's mother has always been very controlling of her life and knows ways to manipulate her with words, texts, phone calls, and mind game. When she got pregnant, her mom was always overbearing about how we should be raising the baby, which name to pick, always trying to get my girlfriend to stay at their house. My girlfriend has her own apartment that she pays for, but is constantly pressured to stay with her parents, and still treats her as if she is a teenager. Examples of this are that we both vape nicotine, and her mom threw a freak out over this and blew up her phone about how she has ruined her life now and the baby's. Fast forward to the baby being born. It was supposed to be a special moment. Her mom, my mom, and I were in the delivery room with me by my girlfriend's side. When the baby was born, we asked for time to bond with the baby. Instead, her mom refused the requests and stayed at the hospital for the entirety of the time, giving neither my girlfriend or I time to be alone with the baby together. My girlfriend is very introverted and shy and is scared to ever stand up to her mom. We've always argued over me telling her to grow a backbone and set boundaries with her mom, as this is our child and this is our life. That the only 2 people that know what's best for the baby is her and I. Not her mom. Nail in the coffin. When it was time to leave the hospital, we went home with the new baby and come to find out, her mom is planning to stay for weeks at my girlfriend's apartment with us. I had formal leave to spend this time with her and the baby. The first night home, her mom came into the room we were in at 5 a.m. and told us to turn off the TV. At this point, I couldn't hold back anymore. Long story short, I went off on her mom and told her to piss off and leave us be, and that she was an overbearing witch. I know this isn't the correct approach, but I just couldn't take it anymore. Her mom then told me that my kids were losers and that I'm a loser, and that her daughter doesn't need me in her life. My girlfriend didn't say anything, she was just in shock. Didn't stand up to her mom at all. Her mom told me to leave, and it was a huge argument. She called her husband, girlfriend's dad, to come over and threaten me. I ended up leaving. Month of withholding child. Girlfriend then said we can't be together anymore because I insulted her family and disrespected them. She went dark on me, and I wasn't able to see my newborn son now for a month. I couldn't believe it. We were super close, and she was nothing like her mother, but her parents are so good at brainwashing her that she believed every word they said. Finally, she began sneaking over to my house when I had my kids for the week, or sneaking me over to her apartment when I didn't have my kids for the week. Her apartment is too small for my kids. Her mother would drive by to see if my car was ever there, and vice versa to see if her car was ever at my place. She finally found out, and I told my GF that she needed to set boundaries and that this was overbearing and controlling, reminding her that she is a 30-year-old adult and should be able to live her life as she should. Current situation, present time. She told her parents that she sees me, but that we aren't together, although we sleep in the same bed, are romantic, and still sleep with each other. Since she told her parents that, she began letting me see my son less and less, 2 nights a week if I'm lucky. My kids are always asking where she and the baby are because they love them to death and haven't gotten to see their new brother that often like we planned. Each time she goes to see her parents, they instill new brainwashing techniques on her because one night we'll be together having a great time taking care of the baby and bonding. Then after she sees her parents, she seems to have a firewall put up where she says we can't stay the night with each other. We should leave at 11 a.m. now. She admitted this is all things that her mother is making her do, and that basically she must abide by what they say. They have nothing being held over her other than wanting the baby while we both work. I have told her a million different ways how this is super controlling of her mother, and that if she loves me, then she should stop letting her mom control her like this. This always turns into a fight because she doesn't know how to confront her mama. I have tried telling her that she holds more power than she thinks she does. For example, she could bluff and tell her parents to stop controlling her, and how she lives by saying they will no longer be allowed to see the baby anymore. She always seems to enjoy being with me, cuddling, talking about how she loves me and how I destroyed everything. Because now her family doesn't like me, and that we have to say that we aren't together anymore, that I almost feel she believes this and that we are just co-parenting. I am at a loss of what to do. I can't make her see reason that she is being controlled and manipulated with the evil sick texts and calls from her mom. It feels like she is brainwashed and doesn't want to cut ties with her mom or her family or set boundaries, and is going with whatever they say. I've tried to detach myself from her saying I can't be with someone who is under this control, but if there was some way to make her realize that her mom is screwed up, then maybe we could finally raise this baby together instead of her mom believing that this is her mom's baby and not ours. Any suggestions? If it comes from me, it comes off as disrespecting her family, and she punishes me and my kids by keeping them away. When it comes from her mom, it's like gospel. I could take her to court, but her parents are rich, and I don't have money for a lawyer. My child is being withheld, and her mind is constantly changing on if she's supposed to follow her heart and be with me, letting me have time as the father of our baby, or if she's supposed to just stay away from me and raise the baby with her parents in her sheltered life with no friends. What do I do? It had started off as a good day until I went shopping at the local Safestay. With what's going on in the world, I was determined to not linger and moved on about my shopping with purpose. Not lingering anywhere unless I had to, such as in the case of pausing to read a label. I did pause to help one elder lady who asked me politely if I could get something off a top shelf for her. That was my mistake. I turned to go back to my shopping when I heard a hymn. Excuse me, the call of the wild Garen. Before I even turned, I popped out the words, I don't work here, never did, turned as I spoke, and there before me was a living meme, every inch a Koran. You help that old hag, she screeched, so don't try to tell me you don't work here. I helped her because she asked politely for my help, you rude old witch, so you can just toddle off and take care of your own shopping, and by the way, I don't work here. I said sharply to her, turned and went back to my shopping, steadfastly ignoring her screeching and yelling. She followed me all the while screeching for a manager. A worker approached to see what was going on and she yelled, not asked, full on yelled at her to get a manager immediately. The worker scuttled off, not wanting to deal with an irate customer to find a manager. Can't hold her to any blame here. It didn't take long for a manager to show up. She, the Karen, started yelling how I was rude to her and refused to help her while at work and blah blah. When she was informed that I'm just another customer, she went feral crazy and got much louder, insisting that I do work there and she saw me helping someone else. It was then she made a huge mistake. I turned and stepped a few feet away to grab something I was getting anyway when she screeched and charged after me. She made a grab for me, determined to see me punished for not being her servant of the moment. I dodged her easily and stepped aside, letting her rush past. When she did, she tripped and fell flat on her face and didn't immediately get up. I never touched her. She did it to herself. If that were the end, you all know I wouldn't have posted here. By the time she started to stir, the police and an ambulance had been called. Police arrived first, within 5 minutes. The ambulance must have been nearby. They were checking her over as best they could without moving her when she started stirring and trying to get up. Of course, she tried to say I shoved her and assaulted her, but the manager had already told them what happened. They would view the security footage when she had been seen to. She was a mess too, bloody all down her front when she was able to sit up, probably from a broken nose or teeth. I wasn't cuffed as I was being calm and not angry. If anything, I was concerned for her. The paramedics arrived shortly after and did their thing and hauled her off on a gurney. The last thing she yelled is that she was suing everyone, very loudly and very rudely. I pointed at the ceiling and said, "Security cameras, good luck with your suit." The police took a look at the security footage, got my name, address, and phone number, and sent me on my way. I'm puzzled at how nearly everywhere I go, someone thinks I work there. Most people are polite and even apologetic when informed that I don't work there, but some, they make shopping or getting out a hilarious and annoying adventure. Enjoying the stories yet? If you do, please subscribe, like, and comment. Background. You see, I'm a 20-year-old female who works at a chain of a convenience store we shall call the Tree of Dollar. Working as a cashier sucks already because of COVID and entitled customers, but it's worse when your own coworkers cannot get along. Karen had just been working there at the store for perhaps only around 3 months yet during the time she had already been promoted to key holder. The power going to her already bleached head, she was acting like she was the one in charge of us all, even though most of us were around longer or had the same position. This is where Irina, good coworker, comes along. Poor Irina. She was a target from day one due to her being a tad bit of a doormat. She would clean the store whenever Karen, sucky coworker, was lazy. She had to cut her break short because Karen wanted to go on her break. Even her own labeled food in the fridge was taken because Karen didn't want to spend $5 on some cheap TV dinner. The incident eventually got to the point where Irina finally had enough, and the two began arguing day by day all of the time. Now, some information I've missed due to not being on the same shift, but the next day I came in, there was already a bad vibe in the room. Karen was muttering under her breath and talking a lot of horrible things about Irina in front of me and the customers she was tending to in line, while Irina tried to stay her distance. My boss wanted for me to have them stay distant, yet the moment I came back up front, the two were arguing over how poor the rug was being swept. Karen, there's so much dirt on here, you think this is a barn or something? Irina, it's just a small bit. I'll grab the brew. Karen, don't even bother. You can't even clean the rug right. Mommy and Daddy can't even show you that much insert racist slur here. Please note that Karen and myself are of color, yet she would always say racist things about Irina, who was white. Stereotypical things like trailer trash or some other nonsense. Irina at this point looked truly drained and walked off to go find the broom. Later, when our shift was about to end, she asked me to ring her up real quick since she didn't want Karen to at her register, and I said sure. After all, she only had like 2 to 3 things, and there weren't a lot of people in line. Right away, as soon as I had finished bagging her stuff, Karen was right behind me and began yelling at us that we shouldn't be shopping on the clock. This was totally okay with my boss since everyone, and I mean everyone, buys stuff on their shift. Karen wanted for Irina to clock out and then buy her stuff, but Irina, of course, protested. By this time, my boss and supervisors had already left us alone in the store, and it was just us along with some stalkers until the second shift arrived. More people began to enter the line and watch as Karen began to enter this huge tirade of how teens like us were so disrespectful and how she would teach us a lesson. Right away, She took out her phone and called my boss about how we were shopping on the clock and disobeying her. My boss was about to ask for our side of the story, but soon Karen hung up the phone and gave us a look like, haha, you're in trouble now. Tired and annoyed, I told her that she had to chill out, that this was not shopping on the clock, and that even if it was fine since it was allowed. Big mistake. Little note about Karen, she's a middle-aged woman who still acts like a trashy teenager from the 11th grade. Her attitude was the worst, as she would flip out on anyone without care or regard for who they were. She was already in hot water because of this, and now that the fire had been struck, she was pissed. I can't remember everything word from word, but Karen was livid. She began to insult my hair, my clothes, and saying that no one would ever want an ugly, stinky hobo like you. Now I have horrible anxiety as it is. Imagine all of this, all of the yelling, all of the cursing, everything. And the store is packed. People are watching, and here I am not knowing anything to say as I'm reliving high school all over again. I went into a panic attack. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, and I was crying, but I was seething. Granted, I shouldn't have said this, but the look on her face made this so worth it. Me. At least I'm not some trashy woman still here slaving away at a counter while trying to land a man. Things got messy from there. Karen wanted to fight, but we were taken outside by the stalkers, blessed them, and left to go home. I'd been given a few days off to calm my nerves, but it didn't help. I felt like complete crap. The revenge. Karen made me feel like I was at my weakest point all over again, like I was trash, just as I was feeling confident over myself and everything. I wanted revenge. When I came home that day, my grandmother saw me crying and came to comfort me before leaving for a few hours. When she came back, she told me Karen wouldn't be a problem. I later got a phone call from the big boss, the district manager, about the events of that day, and after telling him my side, he said he will contact me later. I thought that I was done for, that it was over for me. But then Karen was gone for a few days. A few days turned into a week, and a week became 2. We were informed that Karen had to be tragically let go due to workplace bullying, harassment, poor customer service, and so on. She was gone. Yay, right? Not quite. It wasn't until I came home and told my grandmother what happened, and then he finally told me strike 3. Now my gran is a petty woman. Screw with her, pray that she'll show mercy. Screw with her family, pray that you'll die quickly. That day when she left for those few hours, I found out it was to set her plan into action. She returned to the store hoping to see Karen. My gran found out near the back on her phone talking about how disrespectful I was to her and that I better watch my back. My grandmother started her plan, beginning to act as the world's most annoying customer. Making spills in front of Karen, constantly interrupting her on the phone, etc. and etc. Remember when I said Karen's attitude was the worst? Yeah, she flipped. She flipped once again and lost her cool. From what my grandmother told me, Karen didn't know that my boss had arrived at the store to switch off with her, and when he saw his employee yelling at an elderly woman over a slit case of water that said elderly woman was hunched over to grab, it was the nail in the coffin. Karen was gone. I originally wasn't going to post this due to it being so long along last year. Like October, and unfortunately, Irina left the job due to it stressing her out too much. From what I hear, she's doing better now, free from the terror of Karen. As for Karen, she is the reason I am now posting today. She came to the store, and judging by her surprised face, she didn't think I was still around. But I was. My coworker was outside on her smoke break when Karen stormed outside and proceeded to vent to my confused coworker. Now, judging by her yelling, she was talking about me, obviously. Lot of, I can't believe that someone like her is still working here, and I don't like liars. She's a liar, getting me fired, and she stinks, and she's so ugly. Other than the personal shots to my appearance. Thanks for that, Karen. I took a lot of pleasure seeing her pissed off at seeing me. It brought me even better joy when I went to lock the doors and flipped her off away from the camera's view, smiling and all. Here's a story about the first job that I had a decade ago. Disclaimer, some vagueness ahead because both parties, the company and myself, displayed some awful behavior leading to some horrendous consequences for all in the name of revenge. So I was a new but qualified recruit in a small team that was working with a very large client and stakeholder in the company. Despite my skills, it was my first real job, fresh out of grad school, so I was inexperienced with office politics, contract law, power hierarchies, etc. The clients had given us an almost impossible task to prototype a complex solution to a technical problem that they had. As the only one in the team with the relevant expertise, the burden quickly fell on me to deliver alone, while the others essentially managed. The team leader and effective boss promised me at the beginning that I would get a bonus worth roughly 30 of the salary on which I was hired. Apparently, this bonus was a direct financial contribution from the big clients themselves, and the wheels were in motion to get this extra cash. Great, but not really because it was not in writing. Over the next 2 years, however, no such bonus compensation transpired. I would periodically and half-heartedly ask about this bonus during in-person meetings, and I was verbally reassured it was on its way. In hindsight, I would have been more assertive and perhaps sent an email, but again, I was a newbie and unwilling to bite the hand that feeds, so to speak. After these 2 years, the company began to expand business with the client as a direct result of the work that I was doing on the impossible project. At some point, the clients even present all that hard work of mine at some international conferences, of course claiming it as their intellectual prop and proprietary solution. Although the project ownership rightfully and lawfully belonged to them, the lack of acknowledgement left a bitter taste in my mouth. And worse was that money was flowing around and both companies were profiting from 2 years of painstaking effort, but there was no bonus in sight. So my work contract was also nearing its end in the 3rd year. Obviously, the company wanted to retain me to continue on this project. I was the only one who knew the ins and outs of it. It would be a joint employment between the company and client, as I would be tasked with transitioning the project from the company to the client, which would require several more years to do so. I also went through half a year of specialist training with the clients. Only I could do this job for the foreseeable future. For this, I was offered a decent increase in my salary, but that missing bonus was ruining my trust. At a contract negotiation meeting, I asked about it one last time. The team leader and boss said that they had no recollection of such an agreement offer and that I should have got it in writing. Fair enough. Some lessons are learnt the hard way. But the worst realization was that the missing bonus, a measly 30 of the new hire salary for almost 3 years, was now earmarked for an intern to join me on the project. It was almost a one-to-one calculation, as the client would sponsor the intern with the funds that were intended as a bonus for me. It was the last week of the work contract, and Human Resources had invited me to double-check the document before I was to sign it. Of course, given all the time, money, training, and resources invested in me continuing on this project, and my very real eagerness to do it, it was assumed that I would be here for the long haul and the work contract was a formality. So what happened next is something that I do not recommend that anyone try at home, or work for that matter. It was a moment of impulse from a reckless youth. However, I was feeling particularly vengeful about this missing bonus. My ego had been bruised because I wrongly trusted them to follow through, but I was not clever enough to get the agreement in writing. Well, in a reverse card moment, there was also no written agreement on my end. So I had not yet signed the contract. I carefully double-checked my emails, and there was nothing in writing where I agreed to continue on this project, or even this job. In fact, I had just been verbally enthusiastic about the project during meetings with my boss and the clients. The first new workday rolls around when I am officially no longer employed at the company or with the client. I gave no notice and no warnings. I just abandoned them. On the previous day, I had left my company pager and phone in the office locker. I had to sacrifice a few personal possessions on the office desk. I logged out of the work email messenger system, so they could not reach me. I am not sure how they responded because I deflected every single communication which came my way for the following months. It was bliss knowing that I probably caused this company a major catastrophe for the next few years at least. Of course, I could not predict the consequences that they would face from abrupt and unannounced exit. But I did not have time to care about them. I had to become selfish, and I had to dip into my savings and relocate and start afresh and anew in another city far away, which was very difficult without references considering the professional bridge that I had just burnt. Hence the not recommending part. But eventually my skills began to speak for themselves. The last I heard about the company was from an ex-colleague as we reconnected on an online professional network a few years ago. Apparently, the company still exists, but it is a shell of its former self, as things went horribly south after I left. They lost the big client as I had anticipated. No one else had the skill set to do work if the clients are still players in the sectors, but I have the great fortune of not having had to interact with them. So far, but I could not have predicted the domino effect that followed in the company. A few more large clients followed soon after, because staff had to be reshuffled to do my project, and these other clients felt neglected. Now they are downsizing and in the process of being swallowed by a competitor. From what I gather, the other big casualty of the revenge is that my ex-boss developed some substance problem around this time to cope with this stress, triggered in part by not being able to contact me for months on end during a critical time in the company's expansion. Throw in a divorce too, because this work stress destroyed the marriage as well. I was a little bit guilty when my ex-colleague explained all this, and still do. Is it enough for me to right my wrongs and write an apology or something? Not really, but perhaps I am wrong here. I am open to suggestions. No. This ex-boss has tried to get in touch with me a few more times some years after things went downhill, but I was too busy, so I just continued the ghosting strategy. But anyway, here's to jerk in. I hope it was worth the measly bonus that I deserved. I was brought on as a new recruit, and I was a junior who had to lead the project from the get-go. I had to work hard and learn new skills in the hours outside of work so the fat clients and middle management reaped the rewards. Not on my vengeful watch. The reason that I am writing this is that it is somewhat cathartic. The company did some bad things, and so did I. But this missing bonus still eats me from time to time. I could have bought a house, and I could have settled down in that old town. I wouldn't have been displaced for months and living with my head just above the water, having to rebuild myself for a good few years following that. Abandoning the project and the job was a professional attack at the time. But my revenge was such that whatever happened, I would try to get through life without groveling back to that company. At the current workplace, where I'm also a stakeholder now, I am now proposing a new version of that old project I began a decade ago and never got a chance to see to completion. It would be nice to showcase a patent during an international conference attended by those big former clients. That would be the real bonus. Disclaimer: I live in Europe and English is not my native language, so my apologies for any mistakes. I've been following various communities on Reddit for a few years now, as well as the website Not Always Right, wondering if people like that really exist or if it was mostly creative writing. I also wondered how I would react if I ever witnessed something like that. Well, now I know. A few weeks ago, on a bright Sunday morning, I was on my way to the zoo with my daughter, 2 female, and niece 2, 5 female. I stopped by the grocery store for a picnic. I don't know how it is where you live, but here, foods and drinks and amusement parks and other places are far too expensive. I had the girls in the trolley and got in line to the cashier. The lines were long, but hey, life, right? The cashier was doing her thing, while chatting with the clients, and I was minding my own business, talking with the kids and patiently waiting. Suddenly, I hear shouting and see an irate woman yelling at the poor cashier who was visibly getting more and more upset. The client, an older woman with no distinctive feature, was yelling like a banshee because the cashier dared to wish a good day to the previous client and basically being nice and friendly. And because of that, our dear Karen was running late. Again, it was around 10:30–11 on a Sunday morning F's. That's when I remembered all those stories, those poor workers who were basically not allowed to talk back and have to take the abuse, and I decided to intervene. I have a very strong voice that carries loud when I want to. I asked loud enough for the entire store to hear, "What the hell is your problem?" What kind of behavior is that? I think that Karen was not expecting someone to dare to stop her tirade. She recovered and tried replying. I stopped her and told her that she was the only one holding back the line and that the cashier was doing her job and doing it well. In the meantime, the manager had arrived and had replaced the cashier, who was crying, with another worker and came to ask what was going on. Karen starts again. I let her rant for a few seconds and then gave my version of what happened in the most calm and sane voice possible. Let me tell you, Karen was fuming and started complaining again about the cashier being slow because she was chatting nicely with the customers. By then, her grocery was finished being rung and the manager asked her to pay and leave. This might not be the best climax compared to all the other stories I've read here, and if you've read so far, I hope that if you also encounter this type of entitlement, you will also remember all these Reddit stories and decide to act. Thanks for reading me. By the way, if you ever encounter something similar, Miso gave me the best sentence to use just in case. Well, it's understandable. At that age, they don't have much time left to spare, so feel free to use it if you want. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences, opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.